I never believed in the supernatural or conspiracy theories. That all changed when I moved into my new house last month. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to put down roots in a quiet neighborhood. Little did I know the horrors that awaited me within those walls. The day started like any other moving day, chaotic and exhausting. Boxes were piled everywhere, furniture half assembled. I'd been at it for hours, lugging things up and down stairs. By late afternoon, I was tackling the attic. It was dusty and cramped up there, full of cobwebs and that musty smell old houses get. I was sorting through some boxes left by the previous owners when I found it. Tucked away in a corner, hidden behind an old chair, was a plain black VHS tape. No label, no markings of any kind. Just a regular tape that looked like it had been forgotten for years. At first, I didn't think much of it. Probably just some old home movies or something. But as I held it in my hands, a chill ran down my spine. Something about it felt off. Wrong somehow. I couldn't explain it, but every instinct was screaming at me to put it back and forget I ever saw it. Of course, I didn't listen. Curiosity got the better of me, as it so often does. I took the tape downstairs, telling myself I was being silly. It was just an old video. What harm could it possibly do? Luckily, I still had my old VCR and TV from college days. They were relics at this point, but I'd held onto them for nostalgia's sake. Never thought I'd actually use them again. I spent a good 20 minutes hooking everything up, untangling cords and fiddling with connections. Finally, I got it all set up. The anticipation was killing me as I slid the tape into the VCR. What would I see? Part of me was excited, while another part was filled with dread. I hit play and settled back on the couch to watch. The ancient VCR whirred to life, its mechanisms groaning in protest after years of disuse. At first, there was nothing but a sea of static, the screen awash in a flickering tempest of black and white snow. The harsh electronic hiss filled the room, setting my teeth on edge. I squinted at the screen, finger hovering over the eject button, ready to give up on this mysterious tape I discovered in a forgotten corner of the attic. Just as I was about to hit eject, a flicker of movement caught my eye. The static parted like a curtain, revealing a grainy, monochrome image. My breath caught in my throat as the scene came into focus, every pixel searing itself into my retinas. The room on the screen was a nightmare made manifest. Bare concrete walls loomed on all sides, their pocked and stained surfaces a testament to countless horrors witnessed. A single, naked bull dangled from the ceiling, its weak light barely penetrating the oppressive gloom. Shadows danced in the corners, hinting at unspeakable things lurking just out of sight. In the center of this hellish tableau sat a man bound to a chair. Thick ropes bit into his flesh, angry red welts visible even through the poor video quality. A filthy blindfold was tied tightly around his head, but it did little to muffle the terror emanating from every pore of his being. His clothes, once a neat button-down and slacks, were now little more than tattered rags clinging to his emaciated frame. Even through the grainy footage, I could see the man's entire body trembling. Whether from cold, fear, or both, I couldn't tell. His head lolled to the side, chin resting on his chest in a posture of utter defeat. My stomach churned as I noticed dark stains on his shirt. Was that blood? A voice suddenly cut through the silence, harsh and guttural. The words were in Arabic, incomprehensible to me, but the menacing tone needed no translation. This was an interrogation, and judging by the state of the prisoner, it had been going on for some time. With each barked question, the bound man flinched as if physically struck. He shook his head frantically, mumbling pleas that were lost in the poor audio quality. I leaned closer to the screen, straining to make out any words, any clue as to what was happening. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as the questioning continued. The interrogator's voice grew louder, more insistent. The prisoner's trembling intensified, his breath coming in ragged gasps audible even through the tape's hiss. I found myself mirroring his tension, muscles coiled tight as a spring, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, goosebumps racing down my arms. Something was coming, something terrible. I could feel it in my bones, a primal instinct screaming at me to run, to hide, to look away. But I remained transfixed, unable to tear my eyes from the screen. Suddenly, the image froze. The picture broke apart, dissolving into a sea of blocky pixels. I held my breath, heart pounding so loudly I was sure it would drown out the TV's sound. The screen went black, plunging the room into darkness, save for the faint blue glow of the VCR's display. Seconds ticked by, each one an eternity. Just as I was about to get up and check the machine, the picture snapped back into focus. Someone was removing the prisoner's blindfold. I leaned in closer, morbid curiosity overwhelming my sense of dread. As the cloth fell away, my world tilted on its axis. The face revealed wasn't human at all. Gray, almost translucent skin was pulled taut over an impossibly large, bulbous skull. Where there should have been eyes, two enormous black orbs dominated the creature's face, depthless and shining with an alien intelligence. No nose graced its features, just two thin slits above a lipless mouth that gaped open in a silent scream of otherworldly anguish. I scrambled backward, chair clattering to the floor as I desperately tried to put distance between myself and the TV. My mind reeled, unable to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. It had to be some elaborate hoax, a prop from a B-movie, anything but the truth. But as I stared into those fathomless black eyes, a cold certainty settled over me like a shroud. This was no special effect. No mask or makeup could capture the sheer alienness, the wrongness of the being on the screen. What I was witnessing was all too real. And with that realization came another, even more chilling thought. If this creature was the prisoner, what manner of beings were its captors? The tape continued to play, but I couldn't bear to watch any more. With trembling hands, I switched off the TV, plunging the room into darkness. But even with the screen black, I could still see those eyes, boring into my soul. I knew with sickening certainty that the image would haunt my dreams for years to come. Before I could process what was happening, the VCR made a horrible grinding noise. Smoke started pouring out of it, acrid and choking. I coughed and sputtered, eyes watering as I tried to figure out what to do. To my horror, flames erupted from the TV. The whole thing went up like it was doused in gasoline. I ran to the kitchen to get water, desperately trying to put out the fire. By the time I got it under control, both the TV and VCR were ruined. The tape itself had melted into an unrecognizable lump of plastic. With shaking hands, I cleaned up the mess. Glass and melted plastic everywhere, scorch marks on the floor. The smell of burned electronics filled the air. I opened all the windows, trying to air the place out. As I worked, my mind raced. What the hell had I just seen? It couldn't have been real. Aliens weren't real. It had to be some elaborate hoax, special effects or something. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread in the pit of my stomach. That night, as I tried to sleep, the whispers started. At first, I thought it was just the wind or pipe settling. But as I lay there in the dark, straining to hear, I realized it was coming from inside the walls. The voices were too faint to make out any words, but they seemed to be calling to me, beckoning. I pulled the covers over my head like a child, praying for morning to come. Every creak of the house made me jump. Shadows in the corners seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. I felt like I was losing my mind. When I finally dozed off from sheer exhaustion, my dreams were vivid and terrifying. Flashes of that alien face, staring at me with those soulless black eyes. Indistinct figures moving in shadows, always just out of sight. A sense of being watched by unseen observers. I saw myself strapped to that chair, a blindfold over my eyes. Harsh voices shouting questions I couldn't understand. The feeling of icy fingers on my skin as the blindfold was removed. And then those eyes, boring into me, seeing through to my very soul. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. Sunlight was streaming through the windows, but it brought no comfort. The dreams had felt so real, so vivid. I could still feel the phantom touch of those alien hands. In the harsh light of day, I tried to rationalize everything away. I was just stressed from the move. My eyes were playing tricks on me in the dark. The dreams were my subconscious processing a traumatic sight. It was all in my imagination. But things only got stranger from there. I'd put something down and turn around to find it in a different spot. The whispers continued, growing louder each night. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, only to find nothing there when I looked. I stopped sleeping, barely ate, jumped at every little noise. My mind kept replaying that horrifying video over and over. What did it mean? Where did it come from? And most importantly, what had I unleashed by watching it? I started researching obsessively. UFO sightings, alien abductions, government cover-ups. I spent hours online, going down rabbit holes of conspiracy theories. The deeper I went, the more convinced I became that what I saw was real. There were others out there who had similar experiences. People who had encountered beings that matched what I saw on the tape. Stories of lost time, strange experiments, hybrid breeding programs. It all sounded insane, but I was starting to believe. But that knowledge didn't bring any comfort. If anything, it made things worse. Because now I knew I wasn't crazy. The threat was real, and I had no idea how to protect myself. I considered going to the police, but what would I even say? I had no proof. The tape was destroyed. They'd think I was nuts. So I kept it all to myself, growing more paranoid by the day. I started seeing patterns everywhere. License plates that seemed to be coded messages. Birds that watched me too intently. People on the street who looked just a little off, like they were wearing human suits that didn't quite fit. My work started to suffer. I couldn't concentrate, constantly looking over my shoulder. I was sure my coworkers were in on it somehow, watching me, reporting back to some shadowy organization. Or worse, to the aliens themselves. I installed security cameras all over the house, inside and out. Spent hours reviewing the footage, looking for any sign of intruders. But even when the cameras showed nothing, I could feel eyes on me. The feeling of being watched was constant, inescapable. The whispers got louder, more insistent. I started to make out words here and there. My name, pleas for help, threats and warnings. I stuffed towels in the air vents, taped over electrical outlets. Anything to block out those maddening voices. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that alien face. Those black eyes staring into my soul. I started hallucinating from exhaustion, seeing gray figures dart around corners or loom over my bed at night. I lost track of time. Days blurred together in a haze of paranoia and fear. I stopped leaving the house, convinced they were waiting for me outside. Ordered everything online, peering through the curtains as delivery drivers left packages on the porch. My family tried to intervene. They were worried about me, said I wasn't acting like myself. But I pushed them away. How could I explain what was happening? They'd never believe me. Or worse, they were part of it too. I couldn't trust anyone. After a few weeks of this, I couldn't take it anymore. The constant fear, the lack of sleep, the feeling of eyes always watching. It was too much. I was at my breaking point. Something had to give. In a moment of clarity, I realized I had to get out, leave everything behind and run. It was the only way to escape whatever I had unleashed by watching that cursed tape. I packed a bag with some clothes and essentials, grabbed all the cash I had on hand, left my phone and laptop behind. They could be tracked. As the sun set, I took one last look at the house that had become my prison. Then I got in my car and drove. I didn't have a destination in mind, just knew I had to put as much distance between me and that place as possible. I drove through the night, jumping at every set of headlights in my rearview mirror, convinced they were following me. I'm writing this from a rundown motel room 2 states away. I've been here for days, barely leaving the room. The whispers have followed me. I still see things moving in the shadows, but at least I'm away from that house. It's a small comfort. I don't know what to do next, where to go, who to trust. All I know is that the world is not what we think it is. There are things out there beyond our understanding. Forces that work behind the scenes that we can't even imagine. Sometimes, ignorance really is bliss. Once you've seen behind the curtain, there's no going back. No unseeing what you've seen. No unlearning terrible truths. I know that all too well now. If you're reading this, consider it a warning. Be careful what you go looking for. Don't let curiosity get the better of you like I did, because some mysteries are better left unsolved. Some doors are meant to stay closed. I don't know what's going to happen to me, if they'll find me here, if I'll ever feel safe again. But I had to share my story, had to warn others, because the truth is out there, and it's more terrifying than we could ever imagine.